This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Magazine publisher and entrepreneur Judith Mancini is sharing captivating conversations with experts in their field about the latest trends in our ever-changing world to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Judith Mancini today will spark your interest and inspire you to lead your best life ever. And now, here's Judith.
Hello, everybody. How is everyone doing today? Welcome to Judith Mancini Today. And tomorrow, we're getting ready to launch our newsletter in the next few weeks. Well, we'll hope you like it, too. And today, I'm going to tell you a little nursery rhyme, which I think pertains a lot to what's going on in the United States today. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So said a wise man of this old children's nursery rhyme. Long ago, the monarchy in England forbade the citizens from speaking out about how their country was ruled. Thus, many people would compose these little ditties to spread their thoughts. Today, we are fortunate to have free speech, but as we know, many countries still do not permit their citizens to express their thoughts. As I have tried to help you all to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, I want to take this time to share with you my thoughts about our country, the very best country in the world. Well, that's true. You know, there isn't freedom of speech in a lot of places, and one of them is Iran. And you see what happens to them, whether you be somebody who's out in the streets protesting, or you happen to be an athlete who has said something and you're hung, or a woman who didn't come back when they were supposed to and didn't pledge allegiance to whatever they were asking them to pledge it to in Iran, humiliated by raping her before she was hung. Horrible things are going on in this world. And, you know, for 47 years, Iran has said death to America. Well, we finally pushed the buttons and we have gotten into a little skirmish, I'm going to call it. It's a big war, lots of money, lots of amazing weapons, and lots of destruction, people getting killed. I'm talking about the innocent ones, not the ones that need to be taken out. So I believe that is one reason why President Trump is not willing to just go bomb them some more, since they have signed this new agreement, because they don't want to kill the good citizens of Iran. And there are many, as the ones who came over in the late 70s, 79, and all to our country to find freedom and protection. I have several Iranian friends. They call themselves Persians, which Iran was Persia at one time. And they're devastated. This was a very beautiful country at one time, and the people were happy. But then the schools started disappearing. The women couldn't go to school anymore. All of a sudden, you found them with hijabs, and they couldn't show their face except for their eyes. They couldn't drive cars anymore. All of the freedoms were taken away. This is a country with you women out there are complaining because your husband doesn't want you to go to the movies with your girlfriends. This is a country where you no longer have the ability to drive a car nor could you walk down the street without having a man escort you. They lost all of their freedoms. And we need to take care of this. I'm not even going to get into the economics of it with the oil and the closing of the straits and this and that. This needs to be done. What is happening and what has happened since President Trump was elected is an amount of hate in our country that I've never seen before in my life. We weren't happy with having the Vietnam War and having to go fight over there and losing our friends and relatives, brothers and uncles and fathers, and we were not happy about that. But we pledged to do it, and we did it, and finally we got out. And then, of course, we've had Afghanistan and all these different wars. But this Iranian war as I'm going to call it, is the most frightening one ever because it involves nuclear stockpiles from Iran. And the uranium is underground. We need to get it out. We need to get it so it is not elevated to the point where they can make an atomic bomb, a nuclear bomb. It's very difficult, and we're trying not to kill any civilians. We have had bombing. We've had to go bomb again in the middle of the Iranian night, but we're not hitting civilian apartment buildings and things like that. We are hitting more military targets. We have gone after the regimes and taken them out because they are kill crazy. Death to America, death to America. Now, there's a lot of controversy going on, particularly since former President Obama has taken to the internet waves to talk about his deal with Iran and how much better it was than what our current President Trump has done with his administration. I don't know how many of you are aware of, I don't know how you would miss it, but in President Biden's plan, and he fulfilled part of it, he put billions of dollars on pallets and onto an airplane and flew them to Iran. And that was how he thought he settled this problem of Iran wanting to kill us. Well, you can see it didn't work, did it? But he has taken to the waves, the internet waves, as I call them, and he's telling everybody that what Trump has done, President Trump has done with this war is terrible. What he's done to our entire country is terrible. Well, you know, you can go read the facts. I'm not going to go over every single fact of what President Trump has accomplished since he's been in office. And they have tried every which way to get rid of him, impeaching him. Practically, I guess they did serve an arrest warrant to him. He had his portrait taken by law enforcement. And he's the only president who ever has. Why people hate him so much, I don't know. You know, I was fortunate enough, I think I said this before, that I was fortunate enough to meet him at a rally when he ran the first time. And he couldn't have been more pleasant. And he took time. He's often late to come out to speak. And that's because he is so kind. He will stop and talk to anybody who really wants to know something about him. And that's what he did. And he spoke at this Women in Business organization time. The man does these things out of his heart. and he loves the people of the United States. He loves the United States itself. And people should give him a little pat on the back because he has made our country better, in my opinion. If you look around, you will see that it is better. Spewing hate is not a good thing. And it's come down to the point where the Democrats cannot even talk cordially to the Republicans, and vice versa. However, the Republicans are still trying to speak calmly. Now, when you have somebody in office as president and he is going to give the State of the Union address, you don't do what happened to President Trump in his first term of office. The former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, was the Speaker at that time, and she took her copy of the State of the Union address and stood up and tore it into pieces. That was the most disgusting display of hatred and trying to get the people riled up to show how she hated Trump. I don't know. Maybe she should have hated her husband instead and taken it out on him. After all, he got arrested for drunk driving, and then he got attacked by one of the guys who was a bad guy, came right into his house. Come on. These people have no sensibility to people's feelings, and half the time they don't know what they're talking about. And you could probably say that about me today if you're a Democrat or a socialist or a communist. This has got to stop. You know, we were the kids who grew up during the time of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But the primary thing in the rock and roll was peace and love. The flower children handing flowers to people. And some of them were against the Vietnam War. Of course, we all were. My brother served in Vietnam, and I lost friends in Vietnam, and we didn't like it, but we wanted to support our friends and family. So we did want to demonstrate peacefully. I don't recall anybody standing and yelling and screaming and burning things down like they do now, running cars into people, knocking them down, throwing things at them, having these huge anti-American groups funding the protesters. It's out of control. You can look at Minnesota, what has happened to it over the last few years. You can look at any place now in the country and see these people demonstrating, but not peacefully. And then, of course, the hate. The hate is being spewed by everyone. I personally have never seen a Republican stand on the stairs of the Capitol and spew hatred and say they hated President Obama. They might have said it to their friends, but they didn't stand on the stairs. They didn't stand by the statues and throw paint on the statues of people who were patriots and protected our country as it was being founded. They didn't do things like that. Now you have Jane Fonda, traitor Jane Fonda, who went over to Vietnam, and she was against the war, and she told the Vietnamese that she was against the war, and she secretly said to them that she would help them. And there she went down the line of the prisoners of war in the Hanoi Hilton, shaking each one of their hands. And as she did, these men would put a little piece of paper with their information on it, their information of their army number or military number or a social security number, anything that could get back to their families. And she said, oh, yes, I will make sure they get it. I will make sure she get it. Then she spread her legs and sat on top of a big gun. She is the biggest traitor of a woman that I have ever seen and not had the pleasure of meeting, and I wouldn't want to meet her. This is the kind of thing that has to stop. These stupid women, mostly Democrats, some socialists, some communists, they're the same ones who burned their bras and didn't want anybody to tell them what to do as a woman. They got out there in front of the microphones and spewed horrible things. Jane Fonda again. And a lot of the other ones. A lot of the women in the women's movements. I'm all for women's rights. Don't get me wrong. I'm a businesswoman. I was a successful businesswoman. I like men. Yes, I do. I've had 3 husbands. 2 of them were rotten. I have the good one now. That's just for a little laugh. We can't get too serious on the show, but I have to say that as I said in the beginning, I've never seen such hate and people saying there's nothing good about the United States. And then you get these people elected to office because these young people do not even understand what they're voting for or what they want. They don't know what socialism is. They don't know what communism is. And yet they elect a mayor for the city of New York City, the biggest financial center in the world. And he wants to make city grocery stores. Take the grocery stores and the bodegas that are owned by private individuals, take them away. Make it one big grocery store that the city pays for. What do you think you're going to get in that store? Oh, you can only buy 1 potato today. We don't have enough to go around for everybody. So you can't get 2 potatoes to roast for your kids. Meat? Oh, yeah. It's now coming from Argentina. There's nothing wrong with Argentinian beef. It's very good. But it is something wrong when we can't protect our people raising farm animals and produce and grains in our country. And that's what socialism does. They come and they take this farm away from the people who are running it. They take their property so they no longer have the fields that they need to grow the grains and the wheat, the chickens to lay the eggs. Don't think I'm making this up. I'm not. Look at what Mandami did. One of the first things he said on the day that he was elected or came and accepted that he was mayor, he went after the businessman who owns a penthouse worth several $1,000,000. Well, he owns businesses too, and he employs thousands of people. You know what? I saw them trying to take that. This is in courts and everywhere else right now, trying to straighten it out. Why should he give his property to Mandami and his cronies to let people move in there? I don't care if they are homeless. They shouldn't be moving into somebody else's property. You know, these governors in these big cities and states like New York and Illinois and California, the Golden State that it used to be, they're confiscating properties and saying, oh, it would be okay. The people need a place to live. Well, look at how much money we gave to Newsom in California to take care of the homeless. And he never did anything with it, just like the train. And he's lost thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars and never used the money. And he wants to become more socialistic here. Boy, we have an interesting thing going on in California with Pratt trying to get to be mayor of Los Angeles and Steve Hilton trying to be governor of California. We're trying to get rid of the Democrats because they're not pure Democrats anymore. The Democrat Party is falling apart. It's divided within, and they don't know what to do about it. They have no true leader. You can't look at AOC and think she's a true leader. She's not. Half the time she can't answer a question she's been asked. And when she first was elected, and I remember this specifically, she said, I need to have a raise. The money the government pays us for being in office isn't enough to rent an apartment in New York. 6 figures and you can't rent an apartment in New York. New York is expensive, no doubt. And they have very fine restaurants and hotels and have a lot of traffic from Europe and Japan and different places that come to visit us in the United States. Why should she get any more handout? What was she doing before? She knew she was running for office. She could have a little group of her friends help her out for the extra $25 she needs to pay her rent. And at least she has stopped drinking beer when she's leaning over the kitchen counter trying to talk to people on a video. These people have no idea what they're doing. Now, here is Bernie Sanders, which I get on top of yelling and screaming about him all the time to my husband. Here he is now with his private airplane. Now, I don't think he owns it. I have no idea who owns it. He must have chartered it, I would assume, but I have no idea. And taking a little group of people and going around and supporting all of these people who call themselves Democrat socialist. You can't have the Democratic socialist. It doesn't go together. Democracy means everybody is listened to and spoken to, and you can say and give your opinion to people in a peaceful manner. The Democrats have forgotten that. Watch one of the joint, what do you call it? I just said it a minute ago when Trump was speaking about the State of the Union, and you see them. They won't stand up for a thing he says, which is a huge accomplishment. It has helped our country. They boo. They stomp their feet. Once in a while, they'll stand up for somebody, I don't know, a wounded warrior or something. And believe me, we should stand for wounded warriors. But that's about all they do. And that's where Nancy Pelosi tore up a speech in the first term of his. They weren't any more polite in the last one he gave. I don't know if it's baby boomers, that's us. We had our opinions, but we were mostly peaceful. Yes, I remember the shooting at the school that killed people. And terrible things happened during the Vietnam War, but not like what is going on now with burning cars over and over again in Minneapolis. How many times now have they protested and burned down things? And one time they tried to burn down a police station with the police in it. These are not people who should be doing this. These are people who are paid with their professionally printed posters, t-shirts, hats, gas masks. They feed them the food before they go out. They transport them there. These are rowdy, misinformed people who like to fight and cause problems, and they're funded by people like George Soros, people who hate the United States. Somebody tell me why George Soros would hate the United States. I don't get it. I haven't studied him. I don't know what he does. I just know that he hates the United States. And his son, being raised like that, is now the same way. Excuse me. What about the children that are growing up now? You know, we had a rule in our house that the kids didn't watch the news on television. That's when Desert Storm was going on. And my kids were getting to be of the age where they could have joined the service, but they were still in junior high and high school, the beginning of high school. We don't want any more wars. We want to all live in peace. Can't we go back to that time when it was a little more peaceful after the wars? All these little wars pop up around the world because people won't be kind and polite and talk to each other and try to work things out rather than screaming and throwing things and starting fires and burning down buildings and all. They act like a bunch of maniacs, and I think they are a bunch of maniacs. And they're doing it for the thrill. And that maybe $25 a day they get to go and protest, and they tell them how to protest, so they go do it. This has been going on in our country for many years, fighting for the freedom for the Black people. Those were horrible, horrible times. And the things that were done were just absolutely horrible. And we have finally managed to get back through, and we're doing better, I hope. I hope my friends think we are. I've said it before. I was very fortunate to go to Gardena High School, and we were a very great group of kids that were Asian, Mexican, Black, white. We just didn't even think about it, really. At least I never thought about it. And I never saw a fight or anything at school. Now, maybe there were, and I wasn't in the right place at the right time to see somebody fighting, but I didn't. And we participated in cheerleading together and football together and baseball together and drill teaming together. We didn't do that. We all shared the same things. Fight on Gardena High. That was what we were interested in. And then towards the very end of it, before my class was starting to graduate, the gangs started forming. And I'll never forget, a young man sitting in front of me said, "Do you know about the Bloods and the Crips?" I had no idea what he was talking about. And he was Black and a friend of mine, but I had no idea what he was talking about. And he was telling me what they wore, the colors, and he said, "I want you to stay away from that." That's what we grew up in. We liked each other. We loved each other. My class of high school, I don't talk about the class in college. To me, that was a waste of time, and I quit. So can't we just try? I think that President Trump has done a good thing, but I am still worried about it. And there are a lot of Republicans and some military generals that agree with me, I was going to say, but I agree with them that this time, if Iran causes problems by bombing one of the surrounding countries. We just need to go in there and take out the regime again. So that's what we need to do about the current situation. I don't know what the Democrats are going to do because they can't even come up with somebody to run for president. Now, that's what happened to them last time. They let Joe Biden go ahead and run when he was still in office as president. He put his name in there and he was going to run for the upcoming presidency for a second term. I don't know what's wrong with his wife, but she sure as heck wasn't protecting him with anything. And then there were the debates, which the first person to quit the debate and walk away from running for office was Kamala. So why would she get it into her head that she might want to continue in politics? So Joe picked her to be the running mate with him, and they got elected. And I'm a Republican, a conservative, and I don't like the way we vote in California. And I think many of the elections were rigged, but that's water under the bridge, so to speak. But I think some changes need to be made in some of these elections, how you vote. I'm for voter ID. But here's the problem. Kamala was made border czar, and millions of these people came into our country under her and under Joe Biden. 400,000 children were trafficked, taken away. We don't know they were trafficked, but what else would they have been doing? Unaccompanied minors coming across the border. They didn't know those people. They just followed along in these long millions of people coming across our border. Do you think you could have a European Union with all of the countries in Europe, some large, some small? How could you do that if you didn't have borders? Every country has a border. Even if you climb up into the Alps, some of the people were escaping from Germany and they had to go at the dead of night in snow and ice and climb over the Alps. They were safe when they got across that border. You couldn't see the line of demarcation, but you could figure it out because you'd grown up looking at so many maps and seeing the Alps themselves. And you have to have safe and protected borders. And we didn't, and we are paying for it. But we're getting it straightened out and we're sending back the bad guys. And the ones who had legal documents, they don't usually come across the border like that. My other pet peeve is, well, I have a lot of them apparently, but the one that really irks me with now that AI is coming out and it's difficult for some of us older people to learn. I don't want it to take away jobs, but it seems to be actually creating jobs. But what I want to say is, my husband and I were good friends with a couple who owned an investment company. And they were nice enough people. We saw each other for dinner parties and things like that. And one day I was invited to go to a stockholders meeting. We had a small amount of stock in their company. And I felt like I was leaving myself open to insider trading. And I thought, I don't want to end up like Martha Stewart. So I had called my husband, told him to get rid of that stock. But I also, at that particular meeting, saw a lot of Chinese people on their computers. A lot, I mean, like a dozen. And I spoke to a couple of them, and they said, yes, they were here only for a short time to work. Well, what was happening was the owners didn't have to pay them the same amount of money that they had to pay a United States citizen and give them a good job. They just paid them very little money, and they were on visas and they had to go back. I don't like cheaters. And I don't like people who take advantage of our country. And I'll never forget this man. We were all at a dinner party at a friend's house, and during cocktail hour, he knew that I'd been in business, and he wanted to know my opinion about doing something with somebody in the Middle East, in a country that was not very stable. And he wanted my opinion, and I just thought it was the worst thing in the world to do. And I told him that. And I said, they're against us. Why would you do business with a country who hates America? Some people just don't care. These people went on to buy a home on the water in Mexico, over by Tulum. Well, they had one guard at this little gate that let you into the complex, and all these people had built big houses on the beach. And she thought she was perfectly safe. And maybe she would be. But the cartels, what she didn't understand was it was one of the drop-off beaches for the cartels with their drugs, and they were bringing them from other South American countries and coming to this beach to drop them off and then get them on airplanes and trucks to take them to the United States. What is wrong with these people? Now, let's just talk a minute about traveling in Europe in this day and age. This is not talking about gory wars and things like that. This is about talking about pride in your country and what goes on. If you go to Italy, you can see beautiful art museums and art from centuries ago. You can go into the Colosseum, which was notorious for their gladiators. You can see bridges over rivers that are still flowing from hundreds of years ago. And you can see these monuments and these beautiful buildings in Italy and France and Czechoslovakia and all sorts of places. And they're clean and they keep them up. They not only keep up the facades, but they keep up the interiors. And many of them have been turned into very elaborate flats for people to buy and keep up and help maintain these beautiful buildings. I don't see, and I've been several times to Europe, as a lot of people have. I didn't see any statues that were covered in red paint that they threw paint cans at. I didn't see things like that. Yes, they have protests and they march peacefully through the streets. I saw some of those. I'm sure once in a while they get into a little fisticuffs. They're not perfect over there, and they have a lot of countries that are socialistic. But right now, we have to think about us in the United States and how gracious President Trump has been with everything that he is trying to do, including defending himself against these ridiculous charges that simply aren't true. The man is a Reconstruction genius in my mind. He's cleaned up all the statues. He's cleaned up the White House. He's cleaned up the rivers. He's building the big ballroom with a bottom that goes down 6 stories, which we actually need now because the White House has been under attack by single people, snipers and what have you, many times. And just recently, last weekend, I think it was, the big fight that was there. And Americans love to see that. It was absolutely full, standing room only. It was wonderful. But thank goodness for our FBI for squashing this group of anarchists who were going to use drones to drop bombs on this venue. What's the matter with you people? Why would you want to do that? Are you trying to be a man? Well, you're not a man. You're a man. You're a eunuch. This is another thing that's got to stop. So here I am. It depresses me to talk about this, but I wanted you all to think about who you're voting for. Somebody's trying to get into my house. Who you're voting for in these upcoming midterms and all. And I want you to go through and see if you can pinpoint what they're running for and why they're running and what their thoughts are and how they will help govern the United States. There are 3 major policies, just as I wrap up here. The 3 major the 3 major political parties in our country are the Democrat, the Republicans, and the Independents. But the third parties, you can be an independent and you can vote for anybody. But there is actually an independent party. It's called the American Independent Party. Okay? So Democrat, Republicans, and the active third parties are Libertarian, the Green Party, they're the environment people, the Constitution Party. They think we should go back and obey every single part of the Constitution. American Independent Party, we just said, Peace and Freedom Party, the Forward Party, and the Working Families Party. They're all active in different states, maybe in almost every state, but you don't often know everything that's going on, what they're doing. So we know that in 2028, we're going to be voting for president again. And it's likely that J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio will be at the head of the ticket. We don't know which they will sit in, wanting to do the president or the VP. They'll work that up amongst themselves. But here's the problem. The Democrat Party, and I have a lot of friends who are Democrats, and they're very sane and very aware of what's going on, and they're trying to change it back to a party of John Kennedy, which had its own problems. The Republican Party has its own problems. But I want you to kind of go over all that because we've just gone through the primaries, and it's shocking to me to see these socialist, communist people being elected to office. You don't want your kids to be growing up like that. So I want to do that. And then next week, maybe we'll go through some of them and some of their ideas and what they stand for, piece by piece. In the meantime, we're having the dust people come to clean out the air ducts today to get all the dust out, because here in the desert, we face east, and that's the way the wind comes from. And we are getting desert sand in the cracks of our sliding glass door windows and going up into the air conditioner, into the ductwork, And I'm sneezing all the time. My nose is all the time. So we're having that, and they're on their way here, and I will be happy to get that done. And then we're getting our air conditioner tuned up because it's 108. Love that hot weather. And working on extending the podcast with an up and coming newsletter, which is going to be modeled on my previous magazine, Let's Live, which now is about 100-year-old magazine, but it's out of business because I sold it, and then they just gave it back to me recently, which I'm thrilled. There's nothing there to give back to me because the company folded after I sold it. So, but I'm excited about that because I want you all to let's live joyfully, healthily, wisely, lovingly. Remember, I told you about arthritis? I found these on Amazon. Actually, one of my doctor friends found it. I think her mother has problems with arthritis. I can't remember. Here, I'm getting it wrong. Here, these are stars, and you squeeze them like this during the day. And these are tough ones to squeeze. These will make your hands very healthy and strong. And then the other one is, these are all over the internet. This one came from Health and Wealth Now seminar class I went to. So you can squeeze it in one hand, or you can get another one and squeeze it, but I just use this one sometimes. Can also calm your nerves too. And you can go ahead and get things to calm your nerves on LifeWave and use a little patch. Okay, thank you for joining me today. And remember, cherish yesterday, dream tomorrow, and live today. Thanks for joining.